Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Office Hours with n8n at scale. And thank you for your patience. We had a small time zone miscalculation on our end, so we're kicking things off about an hour later than expected. Really appreciate you sticking with us. So again, welcome again to another episode. We're thrilled to have many of you tuning in from some of the world's leading companies. Our goal is to make sure you walk away today with actionable insights you can apply immediately. We've we've launched this format to answer your questions about scaling with N8N. So don't forget to check our events page on Luma to stay in the loop for future sessions. As always, I'm your host, Angel Menendez, staff developer advocate here at N8N. Over the past 4 years, I've worked with enterprise IT ops and cybersecurity organizations and have seen firsthand how N8N transforms companies, breaking down silos and driving efficiencies at scale. My goal today is to share those insights and help you apply them in your own teams. I'm joined today by Mandeep and Adir, who will be joining us here in just a few minutes, both solutions engineers here at N8N with many years of experience helping teams like yours succeed. Today we're going to walk you through questions and offer practical solutions you can implement right away. Now, we do have a slight change to our format, and I'm very excited to be joined today by Alex Morales, a product operations specialist at collaboration.ai. They're one of our amazing customers. Alex is going to be demoing some of the workflows they've built with N8N and share some best practices from the field, along with their origin story of how they discovered N8N and how they're working to collaborate with us and with their organization. For those of you that are unfamiliar, collaboration.ai is all about unlocking untapped networks and knowledge to power intelligent collaboration. They were founded in Minneapolis, St. Paul in 2017, and they've grown into a global team of creative problem solvers. They take a modular, tech-forward approach to software and services, working with organizations like the US Air Force, PwC, and the World Bank Group to deliver real-time impact across the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. You're going to get a firsthand look today at how they approach automation, scale collaboration. So stay tuned for their demo coming up here in just a moment. Here's what to expect. So today we're going to start with a customer spotlight. This is going to hopefully be an ongoing thing. So we're going to try to bring more customers here so that you can see and get a better idea essentially of how our customers use the platform within N8N and how they can use it to scale their organizations. Then we're going to dive into our submitted questions. We have a few of them submitted in advance. One of those are going to tie in with our new feature spotlight. So my goal today is moving forward is going to be to highlight some of the newer features that we're releasing here at N8N. So to that end, we're going to be talking a little bit about that. And then lastly, we're going to move into our submitted questions and live Q&A. If we can't address your questions today, we'll follow up in the next session after consulting with our internal teams. Feel free to drop those questions either in the chat, in the submission link. We'll get to as many as possible. Now, this is meant to be interactive. It's not just me talking to you. If something resonates, drop a comment. If a topic sparks your curiosity, let us know. We're here to make sure you get value from today's session, so don't be shy, and let's dive right in. All right, excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and bring to the stage Alex Morales with collaboration.ai. Hey, Alex, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm just seeing everyone's chats, people from all around the world, Ecuador, India. So it's nice to be here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the show is seeing where everyone's from. It's really kind of global. And that's one of the things that gets me most excited is to see the impact that the organization is having. So
Yeah.
to that end, Alex, just a few questions today, just to kind of dive in. I know we talked yesterday, we had a chance to kind of dive into it, but one of the things I'd love for you to kind of do your own intro. Tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of how your organization discovered N8N and kind of how it all started, your origin story, essentially.
Yeah, the origin story. Yeah. My name is Alex Morales. I'm from Minnesota. I'm born and raised here, Guatemalan American. Both of my parents are from Guatemala. I've been studying. I studied in 2022. I graduated with computer science and a minor in psychology. And I really entered this realm of like, oh, whoa, tech is really cool. And I've also been born and raised around a group of community builders. So always incorporating social impact initiatives around like everything that I do. So I got really interested into the space of how do we incorporate technology with social impact initiatives. That's always been my passion. So fast forward now, I found a company called Collaboration AI that really focuses on that. You know, how do we bring in technology, but also understand that human beings are at the center of everything that we do. So we've grown to about 30 people now, and with that, we have people from all like different areas of experience and knowledge on what artificial intelligence is and what automations even are. So that was a big gap that we saw. Like we're bringing in these new people, and a lot of people can get very intimidated on what tech is, especially if you have folks who know a lot from it, from our developers and everyone from our team. So we wanted to find a way that we could bridge the gap and bring everyone together to share knowledge. And that's where kind of n8n came into play, that we saw how powerful it could be within our internal team, but also our external, as well as we started to prototype on what would be valuable for users and using n8n to do that. And like me starting to prototype on that instead of bringing it to the product space first. So yeah, that's kind of how we got into it. We saw those two different things. We reached out to n8n folks, and then got the ball rolling. So that's kind of our story there. Apart from work and everything, I like to rock climb. I like to run. Meditation is really cool, and yeah, those are the things about me.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Well, can you tell us a little bit more about collaboration.ai? Essentially, kind of how does the organization essentially, like, I know we talked a little bit about it yesterday, but can you give me like a bird's eye view of kind of how collaboration.ai works in terms of like product and like kind of what their focus
hmm
is?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit more about the product that I'm focused in, but I guess in
Yeah.
essence, right now, like I said, we're focused on incorporating, creating technology, software that really brings human beings in the loop. We have a lot of people within our company who have a lot of experience in facilitation, and they've seen this new realm of, technology is coming into these spaces. How do we bring technology when we do workshops, or how do we use insights about AI to really understand our human network? So the product that I work on, that I'm helping out with, is called Network OS. So the main idea is that we all of us have a network. We all have spaces where we know somebody that can help support another individual. And yeah, like our networks are diverse. So how do we leverage the networks that we have to connect the right people together in order to solve some of the hardest challenges that we have in the world today? So Network OS is this graphic interface visualization. I have one where I'm able to see my whole network, the communities I'm involved in. My family is a part of my network as well. And yeah, so that's a little bit about what Network OS is there. Yeah.
Awesome. And I did get a post here from Edgar that it looks like my audio is lagging. Alex, are you able to hear me okay on
Yeah, I
your
can
end?
hear you. You're good.
Perfect. All right. Excellent. So moving along then, Alex, I know we had talked a little bit about yesterday about some of your flows and processes. One of the things that I was really excited to see was basically how your process management goes. And this is something that whenever I talk to customers or clients, one of the first things I talk about essentially is people want to jump straight into automation. It's like, take away
Mm,
my problems, use it, wave your magic wand, essentially. And I think one of the steps that gets missed is that there needs to be a step before the automation, which is like almost like the architecture or the planning stage,
mhm.
essentially. And we had talked a little bit about that yesterday. Could you tell me a little bit more about that today? Essentially, kind of what your processes are. How do you solve your internal company's
Mm.
problems?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I mean, for me, it was just like trying something, I guess. And I think the context, my background is I love to interview people. I've been a part of documentaries, and, incorporating that empathy piece and also of like the user experience. A lot of UX involves, that research of fully understanding the problems that people have. So I went about it in that way of asking people the challenges that they have, but not intentionally asking them like, "Hey, what automations do you want?" Because that can be kind of confusing. Of like, what is an automation? I don't know what that is. So like an example was I met with this was the first person I met with. He was a facilitator, and I started off with the question of like, "What do you want as an automation?" He was like, I don't need anything." And I was like, okay, I probably shouldn't have asked you that in that way. So we dove deeper at being like, what are the things that you do on a day to day that are annoying? And then he's like, oh, well, I mean, I have this, I have this, I have this, and then he started highlighting more and more things that allow me and in the tech background that I have to really understand. All right, those are the automations that he needs. So we started there, and then you know our team is growing, so I wasn't able to interview everyone. So we actually use an n8n form to ask everyone from our team 5 questions of like, what are the day-to-days that you do that are annoying? In the future, if you could have something that does it for you, how would that look? What's the process that you have? And we use n8n every time they submitted a form. We used AI to look at all their responses, and we created like a type of like agent being like, hey, you're an expert in n8n. Gather these insights and create or identify 3 automations that you would create based off of, you know, the input that they got. So I think to answer your question, starting off with the empathy piece and also, you know, honoring someone's story and the insights that they have in order to execute, and also not assume what they need. So, yeah.
Great answer. Absolutely. And I think that goes back to something that I think most workers in most organizations, I feel like, are split in half in some ways. Like, you have what got them into the organization, what they're passionate about, what they enjoy doing. Why did they get into this position, or in this job role? And if you talk to someone, you'll find that there's usually a split there. There's something they love to do in the job, and then there's the stuff that's like the paperwork, the stuff they don't
Mm-hmm.
enjoy doing. And I find that n8n helps with that other side, that paperwork stuff. It helps take away kind of the time suck. I think somebody in the chat mentioned that. So yeah, so absolutely, Alex. So would you mind kind of sharing a little bit more in depth, kind of like a little bit more about the organization? If you want to share your
Yeah,
screen, as well as like your workflows, kind of walk us through kind of what your organization does on the day to day, or in your role, to help kind of take away that
for
time
sure.
suck,
For
essentially.
sure. Yeah, so I think part of what I kind of want to show to kind of align a little bit on that, Angel, is talking about specifically our last retreat that we did in Cancun. Cancun, I mean, of all spots we could be at, like Cancun was just a cool spot to be at with all of us together. And I had the opportunity there to do a workshop. So I think I want to share this workshop because I think there's a lot of insights on the practices that we use in order to bring people together and get excited about the automations that we were making. So this is our team all right here. And we had basically a full day of what we called AI upskilling and automation understanding, where, you know, you see all these diverse individuals and they all have their different experiences with automations and what that is, comfortabilities on whether they have full knowledge of what an automation is, to being like, I'm just starting out, like I just entered the company and I'm a little nervous to ask people that because there's different levels. So we wanted to create a space where people were able to build automations, learn from one another, and also just get excited and understand like, oh, wow, like this automation could remove this thing that I do every day that I hate. So we started off there. Like I mentioned, our objectives would education, building automations, and enhancing collaboration. This is a photo of us. Me with a coworker, Wade, super awesome guy. And the way we structured these workshops was that each team, I think we had like 4 or 5 teams. Each team had an automation expert. They had an n8n and automation expert, as well as the department team members. So if you were to see here, we also use Notion. So we have these little hubs where we had our n8n expert in the workshop space, as well as the hub members. And then we also had a trainee. So this was really important of, you know, we have an expert, but we also need someone that they can like learn from that knowledge. So we have their names here just so we started to organize. And we had about like 3 hours, and I can send you guys this if you're interested on like how we developed the workshop. But at the end, we had people present, and I'm gonna just share this screen, get a little closer here. So this is the CEO of our company. And within those 3 hours, they started drawing on board. Some people use Miro to kind of draw out those kind of n8n nodes that we would see through the UI, of us asking them like, what's the step-by-step process in order to make that automation come into reality? And we took screenshots of that. So then we weren't able to finish all the automations that day. So we took that, and that's something that I have now that I can build off of. But I don't know if you guys can see this, but like, I thought it was kind of funny that they worked on timesheets. So it says right there, timesheet sucks. I think everyone can agree that timesheets suck and it takes a bunch of your day. So that was the thing that they wanted to solve. And they all came together with the n8n experts, the people who have the experience of writing these timesheets every day, to try to come up with a plan of like, how do we incorporate n8n to create an automation? So We did that for everyone. We did that for all the department people. So we have like operations here, some of their flip charts, product. So product mentioned a lot of Jira release notes as well. So that was the first phase of just like bringing everyone together and then working through that specific automation in order to make that a reality.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And so can you walk us now through, Alex, kind of what automations you're using internally now in order to make your life easier, to take away kind of the headache of, the drudgery of work? Like what exactly can you guys, or what can you show me that kind of shows or highlights some of that work that's being done on
For
Network
sure.
OS?
So I wanted to give up a specific one that's kind of dear to my heart because we were able to work with an organization I'm a part of called Global Shapers. Global Shapers is a part of the World Economic Forum, and they're an international kind of network base of young entrepreneurs, young innovators who are trying to make a change within their hub. So within I'm in Minneapolis, so I'm a part of the Minneapolis hub. But if you go to Guatemala, there's a Guatemala City hub. There's different. We just last week were in Chicago and meeting up with the Chicago hub. So it's just a coming together of all these like young individuals knowing that they have the power to make change, and also having that network within one another. So we had a workshop in Minneapolis, and I mentioned that a lot of our team members, the people we work with, they're facilitators. So we had a workshop in Minneapolis where we were able to gather a lot of the global shapers to come up with 3 projects. What I understood from the facilitators was that the biggest problem of action is that after a workshop event, they have to go through all of their notes and actually get the insights from that workshop in order to share back to an organization. So this one was Global Shapers. So we came together and came up with an automation of, if we're able to record these conversations during these workshops, how can we use n8n to quickly get a transcription, to get the key insights, as well as the things that they need, as well as the things that people in that space can offer based off of human input, and the human input is a transcription. So just to give you guys a visualization and a little bit of what Network OS is, these are all the people that we invited into our Shape-a-thon, we called it, the workshop space for global shapers. So
Alex, let me stop you for a moment. I think you're sharing the tab in Chrome. I don't
yeah,
think we're able to see. There we
yeah.
go. Now I can see it.
I
Yeah.
always hate that. I'm glad you told me at the beginning too, because if I would have like been done talking, you're like, we didn't see any of that. Appreciate that. Um,
No worries.
so this is everyone we invited from the event who came. So you can see me here, and then the people I'm connected with as well. So Isa is a good friend of mine, as well as Bio Wheel, who I went to Chicago with. You can see that we're all connected. But this is a visualization. This helps me understand the people in my community. So who's a part of Minneapolis Global Shapers here, what kind of experience, what kind of knowledge that they have. So if I were to click on Danielle Steer, I can see that she's a part of Global Shapers, shows somewhere here, as well as her experience. So that's just a quick gist of what Network OS is. But what we did within our workshop space was that each breakout session, each kind of workshop session that we had, we recorded the conversations using some of the tech that we have, and then we fed it into Notion. So this is a database I created in Notion where you're able to organize it by an organization, the event, which we called Shape-a-thon, and then different sessions and breakout groups. And then from there, you're able to upload a file. So if I click on choose a file, you upload the audio file, and then this is where the automation, this is where the magic happens here. So when I click when I click transcribe, I'll give an example here. I'm going to turn this back into play. When I click on this, it's going to generate the automation. So you saw that this icon went into the kind of loading thing. So right now the automation is kicking off, and I'll show that here what it's doing. Oops, wrong thing.
I love the visual feedback. I think that is so important. Like there needs to be some kind of way to let you know, hey, something's happening in the background. This is
Right.
wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. Let me get back into this here. All right. So this is the automation workflow. So what it's doing right now is when that button is clicked, it's updating, it's giving that emoji being like, hey, it's starting to run. It's grabbing that database and grabbing the important files.
Are you sharing a
checking
Notion
if an audio.
page, Alex?
So yeah,
Oh, there we go.
good.
Okay. Yeah,
All
now it's good.
right,
Yep.
thank you. So yeah, this is the kind of first part here. The kind of important part here is we use AWS to upload our audio files into a secure location. So in our S3 buckets, as well as AWS Lambda allows you to create functions within AWS to trigger. So what it does is it's uploading the audio file into an S3 directory, as well as creating a specific transcription from that audio file. So we're using AWS's, I believe it's speech to text service for this.
Mhm.
And then from there, it's going to create that transcription. And then so it's running right here. This was a past one that we did. I'll just show you what it's doing here. Uploading. So we're going to upload that into Notion. So this was like, it looks really confusing here, but this is basically just uploading all of that content into a Notion page. One of the limitations that Notion has is that you can only upload 2,000 characters or less into like at a time. Like if I had like 2 pages of a document, like I can't upload it all at once. So this basically splits them into chunks, so then I can upload them block by block. So that's one part of it. It uploads a raw transcription. Then it looks at that transcription and then also gets key insights and uploads that as a transcription or as a Notion page as well. And then the final part is that it extracts ask offers. So what are people asking for from that workshop space? What are they offering within that workshop space? And then also uploading that as a Notion page there. So if I go back into this automation here, I'll click on
I think
this.
it's still there's like a lag, I think, on the display side. There we go.
Oops.
Okay, I
Yeah,
can see it now.
gotcha. Thank you.
No
It
worries.
wasn't even a lag. I just forget. So I
No
appreciate
worries.
that.
No worries.
And then so you'll go here and you see there's duplicates because I ran this again,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you'll see that this is the transcription that we got, as well as where is it right here? The transcription, and then oops, that's another duplicate there.
That's the only downside when rerunning something twice. That's happened to me many times.
Yep. So this is the ask and offers from that transcription. So
So essentially, it's like almost like a summary of the transcription, but formatted in terms of like questions that were asked by different speakers. Um, I noticed that there was no speaker labeling in that.
Yeah.
So it's currently like a little bit more generic in terms of who's asking the questions, but I'm assuming once that functionality is solved in terms of labeling who's saying what,
Yeah.
you'll be able to really connect the questions to the individuals and dive a little bit deeper into that on the network OS side, I'm guessing.
For sure. So that's the next step. So that's where we kind of bring into having the ability to prototype. This isn't the UI, but it's prototyping more of the value input. What's valuable for us to bring into network OS? Because ideally, network OS always ties into people. So if we're able to tie in some of these ask and offers to a specific person, and it's actually interesting that you mentioned that because I'm just looking at this right now, and it does identify like speakers. So it has like a speaker A ask is from the facilitator. Daniela is the lead curator from our Minneapolis hub. So it actually gathered her, and I didn't know that it did this right now. So I think this is just a cool example of like not needing to wait for the whole development phase of adding this into our network OS system, because that takes a lot of time, but be able to just grab the raw source and then output it in ChatGPT using our using AI and seeing what's valuable and how do we start to even evolve our prompts before we even think of bringing that into network OS and think of the UI interface. So yeah.
So in this case, it was using things like context clues within the transcript itself. Like maybe she was saying something like, "Hi, this is Daniela. My question is blah 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 blah," and just from that raw output, it was able to essentially label it in a way. I'm assuming that it must be part of your prompt then. So you have a prompt set up to try to extract those bits of data, speaker A, B, C, things like that, where it can, right? And where it
Mhm.
can't. So I think what I'm getting from you, Alex, is that iteration is important. It's important to start building and see where it can take you. And as you start building, you can build on your builds. You can
Mhm.
essentially kind of grow from there and not worry too much about, oh, it needs to be a perfect product. It just needs to reduce the amount of work. Now, what we were looking at just a moment ago, how much time, like, first of all, were you doing that manually before? And if so, about how long was it taking you to do that process previously?
Mhm. Yes, I mean, all the facilitators on our team, they have like 3 to 4 like facilitation workshops events every week. And the output of it is that they have to ingest all of the information, take screenshots of the drawing boards. They in the past they didn't have audio recording, so it was a lot of note taking and kind of just remembering from your mind. And the output would usually take like 1 to 2 weeks. And now what we're able to do is do it like 30 minutes after a workshop event. And it's like you said, AI isn't exactly perfect still, but it's a great way for people to at least see the action points that they all came into this space with, or like at the end of it. And they're all still together instead of it being like an email that they send after. So that's overall goal of like this space not just being an ideation space and a conversation space, but also being after this workshop, there's so much data there. How do we encapsulate all of that right away while everyone's still there and share it to them? And a lot of times, I mean, not a lot of times, but there will be times that people say, I don't think AI really encapsulated this correctly. And I think that's great because we're also recording that too, where we can evolve the original document to get more clarity and then give them an even better output. So to answer your question, is usually would take 1 to 2 weeks. And now we're able to do it in 30 minutes to a day.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, the factor, like, in just to kind of like visualize that in a way, like it's reducing the amount of time by like factors that like is blows my mind. Like, because this allows you to move quickly and not have to worry, essentially, that you're going to fall behind because you're able to kind of keep up with the fire hose. Can
Hmm.
you quickly? We're almost at about halfway through our show, so I do want to make sure we have time for other items. But this is super fascinating, Alex. Can you tell me a little bit about your process for essentially managing automations? What is your flow for prioritizing?
Hmm.
For knowing what should I work on next, like where should I go in terms of like what is the best use of my time? I'm assuming you get lots of asks. I think you work with many of your team department heads.
Hmm.
How do you know where to spend that time?
Yeah. Um, that's a great question. I think so. The way I have it structured for that, because that was a challenge I initially had. I think first I was brainstorming with people from my company and being like that. That was the exact same thing that I had of like I don't know how to organize this. And what I came up with, and it's this it's definitely not perfect, but it works for me. Is where is it here? So within each of our specific hubs within our spaces, we call it our cafe hubs, collaboration AI for flow and efficiency. I have specific pages for all of them where I'm using a Notion database. So if I go to get facilitation and convening, all the conversations I have from them after the conversations, I'll go in and write into our database here of some of the automations that we should be creating, um, an AI driven knowledge base from workshops. And then I'll give it a description on what it is that aggregates insights, decisions, and learnings from past workshops, allowing facilitators to pull relevant examples, data to inform sessions. It could be that, or it could even be something as simple as like an email generator generating questions. So from there, I meet with my manager actually, and I have a priority level thing here. So I'll walk with him because a lot of times I'm still learning this as well and understanding what's possible and what isn't. So brainstorming with him, his name's Brandon Anderson. He's been awesome, super helpful within just constructing this. Is walking through this with him and then asking him like, do you think this is a priority I should be taking for this week? If I get the good to go from him, I'll start to work on it, and then I'll meet with the people who originally had that idea to show them a rough draft of what I've created and not go into depth all the way, because I know, I mean, every time I've done this, I've made an assumption. So I'll meet with them in order to clarify or make sure that assumption isn't there anymore, and then finish up that automation for that, and then as a way to celebrate, I guess, even like what I do, and then also allow people to understand that this is a collaborative thing. Like, I can't do this without their insights and thoughts. We have a Slack automation, or a Slack space called the like Cafe Automation Slack Hub, where I'll share each week of being like, hey guys, this is the automation of the week. Thank you to this person for giving me the insights and thoughts on like how to approach this. And also telling them, if you guys think this could be replicable, or something similar would be helpful for your department, just send me a message and I'll set it up. And they'll send me DMs of being like, hey, like this would actually be really nice for our space for this. And it's a lot easier because I already have it set up. I just have to make it specific to their context.
Perfect. Alex, that is incredible, sir. So, a couple of takeaways from what you've been telling me. So, first of all, kind of being organized is key here, it sounds like, on your end. To be able to handle the amount of input that you're receiving, you have to, I think, PVR Pose.ai, I think that's the name, mentioned a prioritized backlog. I think that that is key here so that you don't get overwhelmed, right? Like you're not taking in all these jobs. And I think one of the things I struggle with is I get very passionate and excited about building these workflows, and then I'll be building like 4 at once. And, my mind can't quite stretch out that far. And next thing
Yeah.
you know, I'm like at 80% on all of them, but I can't quite get to the finish line on any of them. So I think kind of taking that step back and realizing that there is benefit, not like in essentially organizing your work and taking time out, not to work, but to plan. Once you have that plan and you start moving forward, you can move forward much more quickly because you know where you're going. And on top of that, because you've worked with your manager, you've prioritized it, your ROI is better because you, in essence, you're spending your time where it matters, as opposed to spending your time kind of like on fun, passionate little projects that maybe don't move the needle for the organization as a whole more, correct?
Yeah,
Perfect.
100%. Yeah.
So, and just to reiterate one other thing. So what I'm understanding essentially, yeah, 80/20, Florian, absolutely. What I'm understanding essentially on your end is that one of the problems that you're solving internally is that your team or your organization deals a lot with in-person events. Those inherently are difficult to manage and organize because when you're dealing in a digital space like here, everything is tracked. There's metrics everywhere. You can pull data from everywhere and organize that information into a way that makes sense. However, when you're dealing with in-person spaces, I feel like there is more productivity because you can interface with people on a more natural level. You're getting things like body language and tone, and you're able to really understand kind of, what people are saying, which there is a value to that. But then taking those insights, taking that information on your end is kind of the harder part of that. So what you're doing on your space is using the tools available to you, AI, n8n, your own network OS, and utilizing that to essentially build out tools that help extract as much insight and data from those in-person events to then deploy that across the different invested teams here that essentially are utilizing that. And one last thing, this is something we didn't get a chance to cover today, and I don't think we're going to chance to dive into it, but something you mentioned yesterday that I thought was incredible, was that you're using this for prototyping as well, correct? In terms of like building out products that your own tooling can interface with as a way of prototyping and kind of building things out to see if it's worth the investment first in n8n, and then migrating that to your other product teams that then take over and build real products based around these blueprints, this architecture that you're doing first in n8n. Is that correct? Can you tell me maybe just a quick minute of,
Yeah.
time for that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so that's the first time I've kind of like really, even the conversation yesterday of thinking like, oh, this is a prototyping thing. It isn't an interface thing, but it's more of a prototyping of looking at the value of something, the insights that we get from a workshop and a transcription. So, I mean, an example of that is when I first started creating this automation, this was maybe a month ago, where we did it for our first event. and testing that out. And now a month later, we are incorporating this AI agent within Network OS of uploading a file and then receiving all of like the ask and offers from that transcription, that workshop. So that's the first step there. But what we did was, using n8n to begin the process of uploading an audio file to an S3 bucket using the right directory. So then developers know where to find it, as well as creating a JSON output of the key insights. So that's the beginning steps, and starting to document that. And then also present it and show them that, hey guys, like there's a value here, and this is how it connects to Network OS. So now what we're doing now is prompt management within AWS of, we have these prompts that we've already been iterating and evolving on. Let's put this into AWS and have it a bit more stable, so we know that each time we have a new input of a transcription, where we feel more confident on the output that it's going to give us, because we're the ones who are like organizing and structuring that specific prompt and in the evaluations for that prompt.
I love it. Alex, this is incredible, man. Thank you so much for showing up today and talking with me today, kind of going over this and kind of just sharing your company's insights. If any of our listeners and audience wants to get a hold of you or reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out? Do you have social media or email? What do you prefer in terms of if anyone's interested in reaching out?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is always a thing out there. I don't know if I can upload it. Is there like a chat thing here that I can show?
Yeah, there's a chat. Yeah, send it to me and I'll make sure to post it in the chat as well, so everyone can just click over to it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I got it. I'll go ahead and post that in our chat here.
Sweet. And then if you guys are interested in collaboration AI, I'll send a link here. But yeah, feel free to reach out. Yeah, Angels, thank you for reaching out. It's super cool talking to folks and seeing some of the conversations people are having on the chat. If you have any other things or any questions, feel free to let me know. Oh yeah, and then last thing is we are actually we got an open role for a front end developer. So my manager was like, tell them this. So if anyone's interested, reach out and apply.
Perfect. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think you're in the right audience for that. So hopefully we get that position. I'm gonna definitely have to send you some n8n swag here after this.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, Alex. And we're gonna dive into the next segment here. So once again, thank you again, Alex, for your time. I'm gonna go ahead and bring up my colleague Adir if he's ready to kind of jump in. And so we're gonna go ahead and switch gears here. So we've essentially had a chance to speak with Alex today. Welcome, Adir. And essentially the goal there is to kind of start bringing more of our customers onto this show, to kind of give you all an idea of what's possible. What are organizations doing at scale to kind of grow, and essentially how are they utilizing n8n in their day-to-day to make their lives easier? Because I think in the end, that's why I think there's so much passion in this space, is because we don't want to have to do this work by ourselves. And building out these automations gives you control and ownership over this work, and it keeps you productive. So to that end, enough talking on my end. I'm going to introduce Adir here. Adir, pleasure. Thank you for joining the show. How are you doing, sir?
Very good. It's Friday evening, so very happy to be here, especially talking to you.
Excellent. TGIF, sir. Exactly. Super excited. Excellent. So today, essentially, we're going to do a couple of things, kind of going back to our roots, essentially, and how we do things. We're going to dive into some questions. One of our questions ties into a new kind of segment that I want to start on our end, which is highlighting different features that are coming out of n8n. So I will preface this with the fact that I am still learning about this feature. So let me see if I can pull up our slideshow here. Give me just a moment while I get that spun up. But my goal today is to essentially show the different features we're pulling up here. In this case, I want to talk a little bit about MCP. So it is a new feature, essentially, that we are releasing for n8n. There are essentially, perfect. Yep. Thank you, Johannes. There we go. So we got a question from Rajiv. Can you expand on the integration of MCP and n8n? So just for the sake of our viewers who may not be aware, essentially MCP is an AI-powered feature that essentially allows for, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adir, essentially allows for almost like you're mixing documentation and AI together to automate some of the things that AI can do. Do you have any experience with this, Adir? And can you speak just a moment on this functionality?
Yeah, actually, I'm very excited because, as you mentioned, we have released recently not just the client but also the server, which is always really nice to do. So yeah, as you mentioned, it's I think at n8n we have been doing something similar. For the ones who have been using n8n, you have seen like the agent who has been connecting to different tools. Around now, this one doesn't have to be done that way anymore. Now, MCP basically it's a collection of tools that are predefined already, and then it can be just connected, and it's a single, for them it will be a single entry point that can be used, and it's completely transparent what's happening in the background. And that's something we can probably share later, is the video that our colleague Max has recorded, where he explains what MCP is really good. He basically talks about what MCP is and what a server is. Actually, he's linking that with Cloud and then using it as a client together.
Perfect. I just shared the link to that. Actually, it's our community forum post where that video is embedded. I think it's an incredible way to consume this, because it's a little bit more complex. And Max does a great job of diving into the canvas within the n8n to actually show how to deploy it, how to use it. He dives much deeper than I could in today's show for it. Just to give you an idea, MCP is Model Context Protocol, and essentially allows AI agents to interact with workflows and external tooling. So one of the things that I think a lot of our users are excited about is the ability to build AI agents within n8n. That has, I think, superpowered many people's workflows, because in the past, many of the problems that n8n was solving, if you didn't know how to use the AI, the code node rather, you had a problem essentially, because you were like, okay, well, I guess n8n can't do it. I guess I can't do it. Let's move on to a different project. Now you have so many different tools at your disposal, like, and even mixing the code node with AI. So like in our cloud product, for example, the code node has the ability to, it's mixed with our AI agent, where you can just say, hey, I need this to do, and one of the things I like to do with the code node is anything math related. I don't trust LLMs with math, not yet, and they're getting way better. Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. And it's getting better, and especially with tooling, because you can connect like a calculator almost. And I think that's one of the examples that Max uses on his demo, is connecting an AI tool with a calculator to get more accurate results from, you know, more of the math-based stuff, or more of the logic, or logic-based stuff. So, but there is still a space for the code node. There's still things where, and one of the things that I've noticed when working with AI is the bigger your input, the bigger the context window of tokens that you're shoving into that poor LLM, the more likely it is to hallucinate. And some of the most powerful toolings that I built have very large context inputs. So I'll have a system message. It's very long. It's giving it a lot of context. I'll have an input it's very long, giving it things like transcripts, something that we've talked recently in our previous show on CallForge, which I've even recently started working more and making it bigger. So one of the downsides to this is that increases the chance of hallucination, because it can only keep so much in its I like to think of it as attention span at one time. So the utilization of something like MCP gives it more power. You're able to connect it to more tooling, and it understands native. It's in the past, kind of my cheat code is to like take the documentation of a product, shove it into the system message or the context window, and say, here it is, do whatever it is you need to do. Now that's kind of built in. And not only that, but it can actually interface with things like these APIs and actually do the work almost. So I'd say, like, if I had to compare MCP with a regular agent, it's that you can almost essentially build a RAG without all the work that is needed previously to build a sub workflow that can have all of these kind of documentation data points preloaded in, because that's essentially what it's doing in advance. Is that an accurate statement, Adir? Would you say?
100%. Actually, one of the things that I have recently discussed with one of my customers was the elucidation, because they were saying that using the AI, like I say, the LLM models, were leading out of into random output. And one of the advantages, first of all, the advantage that MCP is bringing is that the major players in the AI space are coming. I'm on board, like OpenAI, Anthropic, both of them who are actually, Anthropic was the one who created that.
Yeah.
But also the good thing that is basically this one providing us as a tool is that instead of asking the LLM model to calculate something, as you mentioned, to do something, let's say create a database or return a live system data or something like that, things that basically the LLM model is not good at, the MCP lets the model call an actual tool that has the knowledge on how to do it properly and then get back the response. And I think you just nailed it in that sense. And the reason why it's because the MCP tool has a, let's say, self-describing, so has the metadata, has the input and output formats that we already know, basically the knowledge, and has already a usage patterns that can help you to have basically use better the model. So understands exactly how a tool works, validates what are the parameters that you need, and also can parse the expected response, which is also one of the biggest issues sometimes. It's like, how do we get to make sure that the output is always consistent? MCP is here to solve that problem.
I love it. I love it. It's like essentially front loading the documentation in the agent, so you don't have to, and then you just give it your credentials and call it a day. So we did get a question from Dinko. I'm not sure if I'm qualified to answer this. I did a little checking to make sure I understand it, but he asked why SSE and not NPX. And I think the context here, server sent events versus node package execute. So I'm assuming this is what is running behind the scenes on the MCP side. Are you familiar with this, Adir? Or I know I'm not, so I just want to make sure I don't speak out of turn here.
The thing is, the good thing about SSE is the persistent and real-time communication. I mean, usually MCC allows the MCP host to basically communicate better in an ideal scenario for an agent-like behavior. For example, where the LLM waits, for example, the tool to be available to receive updates automatically from the tool, or basically it's very good at handling long-running actions. That's what I've learned so far on that sense. And yeah, the other operation I'm not really familiar, but I was reading about what was that choice, and they give like another example of, or another reason why they think that it was good is because the Anthropic implementation, the previous one, it started with that way for certain like architectural reasons, and they decided to go for it. And I think if the OpenAI was on board on it, it's because they really find out that it was a good option. So the problem also with NPX is the pooling, HTTP pooling, network heavy, latency prone, and things like that are probably not suitable for like long running executions.
Makes total sense. We did get another question a couple times. So a couple of our audience is asking whether MCP is going to be available in n8n Cloud. So the answer to that is yes. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adir. It is not there yet. It is currently available in the beta. Correct. I hope I'm saying this right. The beta GitHub thread or flag within the deployment of n8n. Is that correct?
Can I share something here with you?
Yes, please.
Just keep in mind how n8n is fast. I mean, NCP was, I think, first time released in 2024 November, the 25th of November.
Oh yeah.
it was actually released yesterday, 10th of April. Like less than 6 months, we have already released the MCP, the full like capability and client, and so we are really committed on that. So if it's not there yet, I wouldn't expect that it will take that long. So if it's not there already, it's because of reason, but I don't expect our product to engineering team to take that long to release it.
Agreed. I wish I could give a timeline, but like Adir said, my understanding, if it's in beta, that means we're confident in it. We just want to make sure that our users are able to take a look at it. If there's anything there that pops out, that we can address it and make sure that it's good to go for the cloud users. Excellent. So let's go ahead and move on. Let's go ahead and pull up the slideshow once more. Let's move on to our next question here. Let me switch there. Oops, sorry. There we go. I'll let Johannes there. Perfect. All right. So we've been exploring n8n, and on your website, you say enterprise can be run on cloud or self-hosted. I was wondering if a hybrid approach would be possible in these cases. For example, having different environments or instances that are self-hosted, where we want to keep ops in our infra and separated cloud environments to enable others in the org to create new workflows. I've talked, and thank you, Carlos, for submitting this question. I've talked to to Marcus, our other co-host, who sometimes shows up here, and I have a pretty good answer for this, I think. And Adir, I'd love for you to correct me in real time here.
No, that's your answer is correct.
Perfect. I have two answers. So the first is technically yes. I mean, in theory, you can absolutely do this, but there are some caveats, because I have worked in, for example, the cybersecurity space before with other low code, no code platforms. And I think that there are two interpretations of this question that I want to make sure to address. So the first one is kind of the technical yes answer. Yes, absolutely. You can self-host your own n8n instance locally, internally, run it, in your hardware, and then also have a cloud infrastructure through us, for some of your other teams that may not need as a secure or air-gapped environment, essentially. And if you have the enterprise version of n8n, you can use something called environments to essentially kind of keep these two in sync. So you can essentially have, using, I think it's GitHub or Git, essentially to deploy forks of different workflows, and then in different instances, pull down those workflows with their changes. You will still need to have the credentials separate. Those won't be able to kind of bridge that gap, but the actual workflows themselves can synchronize across different instances. So that's my first interpretation of this. Adir, so far, am I on the right path here?
Completely right. Yeah, nothing to comment here.
There is another interpretation of this that, again, coming from the cybersecurity side, I want to address, which is some no-code, low-code tools allow for worker agents to be deployed internally within your environment. This is where the answer is technically no. So you cannot run, for example, the cloud infrastructure, and then maybe have like a headless or no UI version of n8n in your personal instance, and then in the cloud say, hey, I want to run these workflows through the local worker pool on my instance, essentially separate. So those, you would need to have two totally separate instances of n8n. You can't just like run workers on your local instance. So am I on the right path there as well, Adir? Does that make
100%,
sense?
That's 100%. Yeah, that's completely right.
Awesome. Let me see here. So we just got a question from Oni Leach on LinkedIn. Intrigued by the calculator mentioned.
Can I just mention something quickly on the previous one? The reason why we don't do this hybrid approach right now, it's because anything we take security like as one of the biggest things internally. So when you introduce a hybrid deployment, you can also introduce here security issues, because what you're doing is exposing your workers, which are actually where the data is processing and everything like that. And you have to basically have a full list or clear list of things that have to be open from the network side of the things. Yeah. So we really want to avoid that. So that's why when it's cloud, we fully host the cloud version. We basically host the workers, we host the UI. So we make sure that everything is shielded and protected. And if you decide to go for anything self-hosted, you are the one who is taking care for the entire infrastructure, but you keep it all together. So it's easy to control. If you have pieces like in different places, it can be very, very hard to control.
Absolutely. And I think that's a big part of why n8n is so popular. I mean, having the ability to control it and run it in your own environment versus someone else's, I think, is what helps get a lot of people kind of over that hump of deciding whether or not to deploy it at all, because they may have security reasons. They need to be able to run it on their own metal. Now, that leads to a question from Christian Theory. I understand that cloud n8n is hosted in Germany. Would it be possible to have something in the Americas to lower latencies? I can't imagine round trips of info not adding up. This might be a better question for you, Adir. Are we able to deploy our cloud versions of n8n in different, I believe, what is zones or different
regions?
Region. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, you're right. I mean, n8n cloud is basically on Germany and Frankfurt. There are plans to do it in the future, but we can't really give timelines on that. As per today, the only option on cloud is to the version cloud on Frankfurt, or self-hosted in AWS, because we actually are part of the marketplace on AWS. So it's quite easy to install your own n8n version as a self-hosted, but actually in the marketplace of AWS, which the installation is quite simple, easy, and the same, as reliable as the one we have in the cloud.
Perfect. I think that's a great answer. So would enterprise, you be able to then choose your region? Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
Perfect. So it is possible, but just not for cloud, or at least not the public cloud. You would need like enterprise cloud for that.
Exactly.
Awesome. So before we move on to that next question, I saw one that I just wanted to quickly answer and just touch on with from Oni Leach on LinkedIn. She was intrigued by the calculator mentioned earlier. Is it a tool already available we can link to an open AI node as of today? So I can't quite give the answer. Adir, I was going to point people to Max's video because I think his demo actually walks you through that in depth. But
Yes.
can you answer that a little bit better than I can there?
I will definitely. The only thing you have to do is to make sure that you're using the latest version of n8n. It's 1.88. If you don't have that version, you most likely won't see anything. That happened to me yesterday where I really was excited. I went to my instance and it wasn't there. I was really disappointed, but then I learned that it was the new version. But yeah, it's already available. And you can, as I said, as Angel said, you can go to the video. He works through. I mean, I got hooked in that video, to be honest. I watched it completely and I didn't have to do it part two to watch it faster. So it's quite easy to learn and easy to understand.
Awesome. Now we are getting close to time. Now, as a form of apology for our time issues, I'm going to extend the show just by a little bit longer, probably another 5 or 10 minutes, just so we can get a couple more questions in. And as always, continue to submit them via the chat if you'd like. So the next question, thank you, Johannes. What courses do you recommend for a company that is new to using n8n? So I have a pretty novel approach, I would say, when it comes to new companies or organizations or even users diving into n8n. So of course we have our our videos on YouTube on how to use n8n, things like that, like essentially learning specific to n8n. That's of course a great way to go. And there's even tools out there. I saw on Reddit the other day somebody put together a library of n8n training videos that you can use to like organize and prioritize different training videos from all kinds of creators in the web. But I wanted to add to this that I believe personally, because of my journey, one of the things that has made me successful in this space wasn't learning n8n kind of in general, it was understanding JSON. So if I had to talk to somebody that was new to n8n and they wanted to get into the automation space and they weren't completely technical, I probably would not push them into learning n8n first. I would actually say, hey, let's start with the language that underlies n8n and let's understand how JSON works, because that to me has proven to be one of the most powerful assets in terms of deploying workflows. Because one of the things that n8n does as part of the UI is essentially converts many of the API calls or any of the processes or nodes into JSON automatically. Now, many programming languages can do that as well. So you're able, like in Python, you're able to manage and work with data within Python in JSON. You don't have to, but you can. Same with JavaScript, same with many of these other languages. So by learning JSON, you are learning a framework that you can take anywhere. You can use it within n8n, you can use it within a programming language in the future. And the power of that is within n8n. Once you understand how JSON works, you can start understanding the abstractions that n8n uses to make it easy for you to click and drag and move things over. So, Adir, anything you want to add to that? I know I've talked a lot about that, but on your end, what are your thoughts?
I agree with you because I used to say a lot that n8n ultimately is a JSON. I mean, everything at n8n, it's a hack I'm going to teach you. If you select an entire canvas of n8n, you do copy and paste, it's a JSON file. So it's as easy as that. You don't really have to download anything. You can do it. But I'm going to add something here. We actually my case, when I joined, it helped me a lot to go, first of all, through the learning path that we have already in our documentation. We teach you how to start with workflows, in case you have never worked with automation before. And the second one is the amount of videos that we have in YouTube, in n8n, in our channel, but also externally, that can go from the beginning, as Angel said, from a JSON, let's say, perspective. What is a JSON? How to manipulate it? And that's the very starting point. If you already know that, then I would really encourage you to go to our YouTube channel with a bunch of tutorials, examples from different domains. So yeah.
Agreed. Wonderful. Yeah. So awesome. Let's move on to the next one then. Thank you, Johannes. What are best practices in regard to fine-tuning responses from ChatGPT? And I'll just assume that's any LLM to achieve higher data quality and producing outputs in Notion or other integrations. So I'm going to recommend you check out the CallForge video series. I guess it's just one video so far, but the CallForge templates that I've put out, because I think those do a decent job of kind of walking you through real examples of that fine tuning. So what I would recommend, and I'm open to your thoughts on this as well, Adir, is
Mhm.
when building out your prompts, think in terms. I think this is a program, and I'm not a formally trained programmer, so forgive me. But one of the things that my mentor taught me was you want to try to fail as quickly as possible in your code. So to that end, when building a prompt, you give it your prompt, and then you give it two examples. You give an example of it like giving you what you want and giving it an example of what failure is so that it knows instinctively which way to go. Because if you don't, it's just going to start making stuff up. It's just going to be like giving you whatever it thinks you want. And so by defining these two output paths, so basically I think when I'm thinking in terms of prompts, I think of three items. I think, what is my prompt? What is my success? And what is my failure? Those three things together make up like a micro prompt. And then I'll stagger those, I'll put like 10 of those in one giant prompt and essentially use that to create whatever it is I need. Any thoughts on that, Adir, as far as like
I
how
do.
you build your prompts?
Actually, I do. I mean, luckily I had the pleasure to work with you in CallForge, and you were teaching me a lot of things over there. So one of the things I learned a lot is the system prompts. It's really basically to make sure that you enforce in the structure to give you, because as I said, consistency is one of the most important things on AI. So being able to always ask for example, the agent to respond in a JSON format. I mean, most of you already know that there's a feature where you can ask to the structure format. Also, define strict formatting rules in that case. And the problem, especially when the output needs to be parsed by other tools, like for example Notions or Airtable or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the very last one, and this is more about the response from the LLM model, will be to use certain kind of, we all know that training an LLM model is very expensive and takes a lot of time. So one of the things we do a lot is to use context. And by context means you can plug in, for example, a vector storage system with embeddings that is helping the agent to give you the better answer based on the information that you give. So if you have, for example, I have a customer who, for example, is using right now Confluence to basically enrich the context. So every time that you ask a question to our LLM, our AI agent, response is always tailored to the content that is already in their Confluence, rather than a generic response from the LLM model.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Adir, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Now we're getting close to our time, so I want to start kind of wrapping things up a little bit. I've saw a few questions come in the chat, so I want to try to hit a couple of those quickly before we start wrapping up today. I saw a question. Let me scroll up a little bit. The first, I saw a question regarding micro communities. So we are working, especially on the marketing side, for creating these kind of micro communities. We're starting in the creator space first and kind of going from there. But I foresee a future, again, no timelines, but I foresee a future where those micro communities will start either growing organically, or we will hopefully start helping nurture those as well, as we see more and more growth in those. So definitely, I think that's huge. I think that is definitely the goal long term. One of the other questions I saw come in here, let me just scroll down here. How does the process of selling templates on the n8n marketplace work? And is there currently a strong demand for it? So I don't know the full logistics of it. I do know it does work, and I do know there is strong demand there. I've been working with a couple of YouTube creators who are using it, and they are making money. I mean, a significant amount in terms of building templates, selling them on their videos, and kind of like essentially monetizing them and using the template gallery as the tool for that. And so it's one of those things that it depends on your audience. I think the bigger your audience, the more likely you are to get paid for those. But it is definitely something that is offered, and is definitely something that I am seeing, definitely people making money off. Sometimes I'm like, man, I should be doing that too. But all of mine I release are free. I work for n8n, so my goal is to promote n8n. But man, sometimes I'm like, oh. One of the things that I would love to see on our end is eventually being able to bundle sub workflows, because I think that there's a lot of power in modularizing your flows. Currently, that's not something that's very easy to do with our current implementation of selling workflows. I hope that changes in the future. So let's see.
Okay,
Go
there's
ahead,
one
Adir.
question. If you okay,
Yeah.
I really liked the question somebody asked. I don't know exactly what is
Yes,
it. I
please.
can read it because I was taking a note because that's really important. And
Yes.
the
Go
question
ahead.
was about if does the MCP still affect the context window, and if yes, is there a limit on how much tools I can connect to MCP? And I like that question because there are so many tools sometimes that we are just plugging because we think that's gonna work, and it's gonna work definitely. But there is an implication, and it's a really, really good question here. Indirectly, it has an implication because at the end, in a tool definition, like for example, names, description, the input-output schema are loaded into the LLM context window. That means that more tools, more tokens, and can basically slow down the reasoning and basically affect the tool recognition that cares. So my recommendation is, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't use tools, but only expose the essential tools that you know that at some point is going to be used. Don't just plug in tools for the sake of doing it. That's one of them. And keep the tool description very concise when you're using it.
Yes, exactly. I think that's a great point to make. So again, just to add to that, the bigger the description, because you have to imagine that there are multiple calls being made to this LLM. The first one gives it a list of all the tools available in that description. Those descriptions are what trigger the context to say, oh, I've got something out of my specialty, out of my knowledge base, but I see I have a tool for this. Let's do another prompt. Let's go ahead and send this to another call to the LLM that essentially powers that tool and then runs it. But again, the more input you have, the more likely you are to hallucinate, the more likely you are to get unexpected outputs, to say the least. So agreed. I couldn't agree with you more, dear. Great point. All right, let's see. I think we might have time for one more question. I think we are at time. I will post the link to Call Forge here in a moment. Let me see. Oh, I think I'll answer one by Geek Wolf. He asked if it's possible to create an integration where you connect something like Google Sheets to the Meta API. And yes, that should be doable. I have not worked with the Meta API as much as I would like, but I know that back when it was the Facebook API, you were able to do that. The part that I want to draw attention to is a lot of two parts. The first is much of what is available in n8n is not always what is available in the entire API. So for example, with the Meta node or Facebook node, you may not have everything simple and easy to use, or you may not have every particular endpoint within an API available. And that is why you need to think in terms of, is this something that n8n has built for me to make my life easier? Or do I need to use the HTTP node, which is like our Swiss Army knife, to connect directly to the API and basically pull out whatever I need from the API? So kind of keep that in mind when building that. And I think that will help make that process a little bit smoother. So yeah, so anything you want to add to that, Adir?
Very clear.
Perfect. All right. This has been so amazing, everyone. We have had over 630 attendees live. I think that's a record. I think last time we hit 580 live and we were late. So I'm embarrassed at that, but I'm so excited. Next time we will do a much better job of aligning our time zones to essentially make sure that we are able to be on time, get everything kind of set up. And we've also got some amazing questions today. So my goal moving forward is I'm going to try to start doing more standout videos kind of on their own, answering your questions as they come in. I want to continue to use this form that essentially I've provided. We have it in the chat for you to submit your questions, and then I want to be able to answer those questions in video format. And the ones that I see a lot of, then we'll bring into this format, into the webinar format. And as always, I want to hear your questions live as we're doing here. Excellent, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a great time today. Adir, thank you so much for your help. I couldn't do this without a co-host. I really appreciate you showing up today. I hope I have you back again. You and Marcus and Mandeep have been amazing, letting me borrow your time. Is there a good way to find you online if any of our audience wants to look into purchasing n8n Enterprise? How can they find you?
Actually, you can go to my LinkedIn profile. I think it's already posted. I mean, we are all over the place. So just if you need any queries, you have a bunch of emails. But first of all, thank you very much. I really enjoyed the time with you, as usual. And a pleasure for everybody and your questions.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day and happy flowgramming.